I don't think anyone believed that the miniseries could physically happen. Brian Henson had approached me and he'd talked to Ben as well, and he said, you know, if we can make this happen, are you guys interested? Because we can't do it without you, so we need to just check first that you're interested in the project. And we said, well, of course we're interested. We'll do whatever we can. And timing-wise, it just couldn't have been worse, really. I was doing some work in the States and having to find a way to get back to Sydney and make it all fit in. That's what made me the most nervous about it. And Brian at one stage said to me, look, if you can't do it, we can't do it at another time. It's now or never. And it was amazing how galvanizing that was. We all just, you know, found a way to get there, and you know, once you're in the costume, it only takes a couple of minutes before it feels like you never left. But in that period, it was quite surreal, actually, having to. No one really wanted it to be over. I think none of us were really willing to accept that. So, hearing that there was a way, because there aren't many happy endings in television land normally, and for this to be given another chance was extraordinary. And I was so looking forward to seeing everybody. It was like a really cool reunion party, and with a bit of hard work in between. I think FarScape was a unique show for a reason, and there were a lot of people put into the mix who made it what it was. And it was highly collaborative and inventive, and I missed being around those people on a daily basis, and I took it for granted. And then the additional layer to that was that I love these people. Like it was an excellent family. To be all so collectively enthusiastic about what we were doing, to not have that every day, to have had the luxury of that for a couple of years, and then to have it go, and then hear that you've got the opportunity to have that back for a short time. It made it a very special time for us, because it wasn't a whole season that we had to sort of build up energy stores for and just try and pace ourselves. It was a specific amount of time, so we could just devote all our energy to it and really make the most of it. So it was excellent to see everyone again. It was just fantastic. Such an interesting concept, Erin being pregnant, and Andrew Prowse and I had a chat about it, and there were so many elements to fit into that big story, and so many cast members to, you know, so many characters to serve. And so we had to work out basically what Erin's attitude towards the pregnancy would be, let alone mine as an actor, and how to deal with this new. I would always welcome something new to come to Erin. And Ben and I always found it interesting as our characters became more involved romantically, there was the potential for our relationship to become more domesticated. And so the pregnancy was an interesting one. And I remember doing some research and reading that there was a warrior who's documented in history, I think Korean history, who rode into battle pregnant and had to keep getting her body armor adapted as her belly grew. And I remember thinking, I mean, for people outside of FarScape, people say, this is absurd, this would never happen. Well, nothing on FarScape ever really happens, so, especially in science fiction. And it was perfect for Erin, because David Kemper had always said to me, you know, she's a true warrior, and that's what she should always be. She should be a warrior first. And, you know, she's a strong woman, but she's a warrior first. And Crichton is the one that turned her really from that woman child into a proper woman. And we see that with the pregnancy. That's what really finally helps her evolve into a full-rounded woman. And I was very conscious of the fact when Crichton is doing his deal with the devils at the end, that Erin's focus, just subtly, you see her in the background stroking the baby's head, and you're aware of the fact that it's become an appendage. It's part of her now, just as her gun is. Seeing her adapt to that as quickly as she did was an important part for me. When it came to the Peacekeeper Wars, it was a very ambitious story to tell. It was a new story for potential new audiences, so it was a standalone miniseries, and not just necessarily a continuation of the show. And it required that each of the actors took responsibility for the characters that they've played for so many years and find ways to honor them in the time that they've been given scene to do that. Tony Till said to me at the end of first season, I think it was, or maybe second season, I came to him and I said, have you got any notes for me? Because I always want to learn, and I think when you get into an environment where you're playing a lead, people presume that you won't take, not necessarily criticism, but they don't feel probably comfortable volunteering any information. So I would go to people and say, what do you think? What can I do better next time round? And Tony Till just said to me, he said, I can't really say anything to you, just take bigger risks. So that's what I started to do. And so when it came to Ben's episode, John Quixote, it was like, well, I'm going to do something off the wall, and And if Ben likes it, then I'll do it. And I was worried that I was going to get fired or that I'd end up on the edit room floor, but he wrote a beautiful opportunity for me, and thankfully I didn't trash it. But taking risks has probably been the best advice I've had creatively. Creative choices are only going to, ultimately help the product. Yeah, I think shooting makes me feel better is probably my favorite. We weren't quite sure what to do in that moment, and to me that's just quintessential Erin. If I could sum her up in one phrase, that seemed to be the most golden opportunity to expose her as the real warrior. And for her to come to that point in her journey that she's giving birth, still wanting to fight, but being a petulant child as well, and so, shooting makes me feel better, and a great opportunity for the band between Kryne and Erin, for him to say, come on, for once, let me watch your back, and you've got something to do. Go give birth to our child, and I'll hold down the fort. It's going to be okay. The first death scene was, I think Meryl Streep said something similar the other day in the press, and she and I, we're like this. She said that when she's dealing with tough material that other people would think is difficult to approach, or it's dramatic and the material is sad or morbid in some way, that she embraces it because that's the sort of stuff that actors relish, and I feel the same way. So on one level, which while it may sound insensitive, it was an opportunity that I really looked forward to, because it was exploring something that most people don't want to ever have to deal with, but it is a part of life. And in terms of drama, that's a hugely dramatic and horrific thing to experience. So it's kind of safe to dip your toe in that water, because it isn't really happening. Emotionally, though, when a scene like that is well written and when the characters are well drawn, it works itself out. You don't have to do much work. One of the key moments in Erin's life, to that point, probably the most key moment for her. We'd seen her as a very, I think, dysfunctional woman child up until that point. She finally allowed herself to love somebody, and then they're taken away from her. And she's quite stoic. I mean, it's very touching to me when the director said, what do you want to do? He thought that she'd get up and leave, and I said, I can't imagine that for a second. I think when someone goes, you don't believe that they're really gone. You want to stay with them for as long as you can still feel warmth in their body. So that was very touching for me. It made me a bit choked thinking about it. I slobbered all over Ben, the poor dear. I was sort of a blubbering mess by the time we had our last kiss. When it came to dealing with Crichton's potential death in Peacekeeper Wars, that was the first time that on the page, Erin said, help me, once. And I thought, wow, this is a really big moment, because in the past, if there'd ever been an inkling of that on the script, it was always taken out, because we thought, let's make the stronger choice, let's make her really kind of either in denial or really genuinely staunch about things, because she's a warrior. And it couldn't have been a more powerful moment for me to play, and I thought, I'm just going to, let's see Erin at her most broken, her most alone and distraught, and the idea of her having this newborn child in her arms, and the idea that she's made a mistake, and get up, what, help me, somebody help me. The fact that she realizes for the first time in her life that she's on her own and dealing with a child. I don't think she ever would have imagined that she would have to bring this child up on her own. Something that women in real life go through all the time, but for Erin that was just her at her most vulnerable. And it's fantastic to have an opportunity as an actor to portray someone who is that vulnerable and strong at the same time. So it was a great experience.